Welcome to Workforce Central, the official podcast of the National Association of Workforce Boards. Stay tuned as we explore the latest resources, thoughts, and trends in workforce development. And now, here's your host, Ron Painter.
Welcome. I'm Ron Painter. This is Workforce Central. I'm joined today by Laurie Moran, who is the president and CEO of the Danville, Pittsylvania County Chamber of Commerce. Laurie is the president of the chamber. She previously worked as the communications manager for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company's Danville plant, as president of the Pittsylvania County Chamber of Commerce, and more importantly to me, former chair of the National Association of Workforce Boards. Laurie, welcome and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Ron.
Laurie, I want to start off and ask you, you're in a really interesting position as the chamber director coming out of the private sector. What do you think is the most pressing issue in workforce development right now?
The issue that I hear the most has been the disconnect between the workforce that we have available and the jobs that our employers are seeking. It is amazing that even when we were in higher unemployment, we had so many employers, not only in the region where I live in Southern Virginia, but across the country, who were having difficulty filling jobs. So I think there's a real pressing need that we do a better job of matching the skills of our workforce with the skills that our employers need.
And you're in an area, Laurie, I failed to mention Southern Virginia. You're in an area where the economy has really transitioned I think you came to the chamber in 2002. So you've seen a very different kind of region today, correct?
Absolutely. And in many ways, we're not unlike a lot of other regions across the country. Our economy was built on tobacco and textiles, and in our neighboring communities on furniture. So very strong manufacturing background and agricultural background. And while we still have those sectors, and while those sectors are still very critical to the economy of the region, they have changed significantly in the past 15 years. We're seeing much more technology. We're seeing much higher skill levels. And entry-level positions today carry a lot more skill needs and requirements than 15 to 20 years ago.
And that's the challenge that your member companies present to you, Laurie?
It is the challenge. I think that as our companies look at what are those needs, we hear the skill needs. We also see opportunities that just because of the dynamics of what's happened in our country, that we're seeing fewer people that are coming out of school, hitting work age, that have work experience. So if you were to go back 20, 50 years ago, a lot of people had opportunities to work while they were in high school. They gained work experience. They gained that famous phrase that all employers like to use, a good work ethic. They learned how to work. They learned how to show up on time, be a good team player, and they learned those skills while they were in school. Most of our youth don't have those work experiences today, and so when our employers are getting them, they're not only needing the technical skills, but they're needing a lot of the job readiness skills that perhaps youth of a few years ago already had.
So, Laurie, what I hear, my translation of that, I guess, is what I hear you say is that translation of what it means to be at work to people who are trying to get into the labor market, you specifically talking about youth. What's the biggest hurdle in that translation process? How do we not get that right? What could help?
I think we've got to be more creative in how we help to get people the work experience that companies and employers are looking for. And when that isn't a job because corporate policy doesn't allow somebody under the age of 18, or the farm community doesn't hire youth or isn't able to hire youth the way they used to, we've got to look at other options. We've got to take our workforce needs and start really focusing not only on our adult population, but I think on our youth population as well. Finding companies where they can have internships or job shadowing programs and ways to expose and maybe get employers into the classroom more. We've got to help our emerging workforce better understand what the expectations of employers are, so they're prepared for the jobs that they're not only getting the education for, but the skill sets for as well.
Do you see that, Laurie, as that's something that companies need to participate in as well? And how can they do that?
It's definitely something that I think companies need to participate in. It's critical as they do pipeline development. And so I think that we as organizations in our communities, and when I say we, whether that's chambers or other business associations, working closely with our workforce investment boards and being a partner to those workforce investment boards, we've got to be crafting opportunities and solutions in helping employers understand where they can connect and engage with the most value. Employers want to be involved. They want to be helping their future workforce, but if we don't give them a clear path and easy access onto that path to help know how to do that, it's a major disconnect.
Laurie, when we were at NAWB working on the reauthorization of the Workforce Investment Act, ultimately turning into what I call the Innovation and Opportunity Act, you were really instrumental in helping us reach out to local chambers. What was the biggest misconception, I guess, about the workforce system or workforce development as you work with local chambers?
I think that very similar to any type of organizational structure we were to talk about, whether it's workforce investment boards or chambers of commerce, we have some great examples of innovative boards that are doing wonderful work. And likewise, we have some boards that may not be doing what the law mandates. They're not doing a lot more. And I think the greatest challenge we have run into, or that I ran into as I talked to chambers, were in those communities where they viewed the workforce system as purely a social services type of system. They didn't see it as being that critical player in a community to really connect economic development efforts with the workforce picture. They didn't see that connection, or it wasn't working that way in their communities. And unfortunately, and Ron, you and I have talked about this a lot, we get judged by our weakest link when we share the name of an organizations or organizations across the country. And so oftentimes we heard the horror stories, and that was the perception that a lot of people had. But the reality in traveling across the country is there were so many boards that were doing such great work. And how do we then take and replicate that to make that work in other regions?
Well, we certainly, I certainly appreciated, Laurie. I think the system really appreciated the help that you guided us along with Alma Salazar from LA. What do you think now we have the Innovation and Opportunity Act? What do you, as the former chair of the National Association of Workforce Boards, very involved with everything NAWB, what do you think has changed, and what do you see as some of the challenges that the industry faces?
Well, I think probably the jury is still out on some of that. I know for a lot of our states, and talking to friends across the country, different states are at different places in actually enacting the act and determining what that will mean for the local boards. And I know there are a lot of local boards that are still trying to understand. But I think the exciting part is, first, it validates the work that's being done by local boards, and it makes our local boards realize they are part of a solution. And so I think that gives a new energy, I hope, to our boards. The fact that we're looking at innovation is I hope that challenges and motivates our boards to know that the country needs more than just the minimum. We need people to helping us think through so that we can all learn from the successes. And I think for employers, it's an opportunity as we look at the Innovation and Opportunity Act, it's really thinking through smart decisions that are strategic for regions that really impact sectors, because I think sometimes in the past we've been very quick to respond to individual employers, as we should, but we don't step back and realize how we can have a greater impact by growing those sectors. And we do that working in partnership with our economic development organizations so that we really are, as regions, being strategic in how we create jobs and then able to provide the workforce for those jobs.
So do you think, Laurie, that is gaining a greater appreciation or gaining more confidence in thinking about workforce as a system rather than as a program or just kind of a one-off to a company?
I think it's got to be a system. I think we've looked at it too much in the past. And I think when you asked earlier what was one of the challenges, people viewed it as a program. It's a system, and it has to be a very well integrated system that has all of the key players at the table working in partnership at the end of the day, trying to help every person in their community achieve their American dream, whatever that may mean, but that help that person to be able to get the type of job opportunities that they can support the lifestyle they choose. And in order to do that, we have to work through our employers who are creating jobs to be as successful and as profitable as they can be. And that's a team approach that requires everybody from our workforce boards to our employers or in our employer organizations to economic development to community college and training providers, the K-12 system, the early childhood initiatives. Everybody needs to be at the table having that conversation and crafting the solutions that make sense for the regions they represent.
Laurie, I'm going to ask you to borrow lessons, if you will. The chambers, local chambers, and I know from some situations in your area that you and I have chatted about, local chambers are really a collaborative of business interests that, if I'm correct, that act collectively. Am I characterizing that reasonably?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, and again,
So
I think yeah.
What are lessons? What are lessons from your experience as a chamber executive? What are lessons that you would say to a workforce board director about how you do that? What's really critical in that collaborative process?
In any collaborative process, the first thing I tell anybody is the hardest work you will ever do.
It is.
It is. So anybody who goes into it with the false illusion that collaboration is easy and fun, it's not. I mean, it can be, but it's hard work. And it requires everybody to come to the table and bring what they have, the strengths and resources they have to the table. But we also have to recognize that everybody at the table needs to walk away with a gain as well. And so we have to understand there's a give and take when you get into collaboration, but you have to have a very strong shared vision. So I tell you that's the first lesson. You know, collaboration for the sake of just collaborating makes no sense. Be very focused on what that shared vision is and recognize that the group that may be collaborating today may be totally different next week if the issue changes or the opportunity changes, because you need the right people at the table. That's probably the second lesson. You need the right people sitting around the table when you get into collaboration. And so I think it really is about trying to identify that shared vision, finding the people who have the ability to influence that vision and move the region towards that shared vision. And then recognizing at the end of the day, it really does not matter who gets credit, because if the region is growing and jobs are being created and people are getting jobs, everybody wins.
Laurie, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join me. Closing thoughts that you might have?
I would say the closing thoughts for employers, the closing thoughts for chambers or other business associations, and for other partners that are involved in workforce. It's going to take every one of us working in our regions to make our regions the best that they can be. So find that place where it makes sense for you to get connected, because it really does make a difference in our local communities.
Great closing thought. Thanks. My name is Ron Painter. You've been tuned in to Workforce Central, and my guest today has been Laurie Moran, not only a great true friend, but president and CEO of the Danville, Pittsylvania County Chamber of Commerce in Southern Virginia. Laurie, thank you, and thank you all for listening.